For a series like God of War, it's odd that it would manage 2 prequels, especially since Ascension was all about Kratos wanting his memory back, and Chains of Olympus is all about wanting that memory to go away. The cannon's folding in on itself, run! Otherwise, it starts where Ascension left off, with Kratos dealing with his PTSD by working for the gods and hoping against hope that eventually they'll take away his memories. He's starting to get jaded about it and realizing that the gods will never fulfill their half of the deal. His current job for them is to head to Helios' chariot and figuring out why it just crashed into the planet. On the way, we'll be doing the usual puzzle solving, climbing walls, pulling levers, and crate pulling, the usual 3, but that's when we run into our first snag, Morpheus. Since Helios is no longer pulling the sun across the sky, he's taken the opportunity to begin taking over the world with his army of darkness. What's odd is that he's not actually the main villain, and it seems like he knows less than Kratos about why Helios crashed. Thankfully, in spite of Morpheus' army, we managed to get Helios' chariot working by activating the fire steeds, who then take us into Hades for some reason. The whole drop into Hades comes literally out of nowhere, but shames me if I don't trust the flaming horses to know their directions. Kratos walks around for a bit and gets to Charon, who refuses to take him further into Hades, and instead killing him and sending him into the torture pits with the Titans, because apparently he's that much of a dickhead. After another string of ridiculous puzzles and wall climbing, we get back to Charon and beat him into paste for screwing Kratos over, and we manage to get back to the Temple of Persephone, where he's on the chase to get to his daughter Calliope, who's apparently an illusion. This temple is filled to the brim with tough as shit enemies, but if Kratos can manage to get through this ballroom blitz, he manages to find Persephone? Yeah, the game pulls its last card and reveals that Persephone is actually the bad guy, allied with Atlas, who's been using Helios to destroy the tower holding up Earth. Apparently, Persephone's been a bit unhappy with her dual living arrangement. She tries to talk Kratos out of finding Calliope, but because Kratos is Kratos, he doesn't listen and gets into Elysium by giving up his powers. After reuniting with Calliope, he immediately regrets his decision as Persephone gloats about her imminent victory because Kratos was a giant, selfish moron. Kratos realizes he can't stay with Calliope and begins a murder spree through every soul in Elysium to become the ghost of Sparta again so that he can take down Persephone the Valkyrie. This heart-wrenching moment could have worked if we were immersed in Kratos' past and his struggles up to now, but the most we ever see of it and his family is just painful skipping flashbacks, so no dice. You have to establish the importance of the relationship if you want to use it for emotional impact in the story. You can't just tell the player that it's important to them, because then it ends up being this press X to pay respects moment in the game. After a brutal clash, Persephone is outright murdered, Atlas gets chained to Earth again, and somehow Kratos falls out of Hades and ends up in the Earth's sky and lands on assumedly the cliff where he began God of War 1, except that Zeus and Athena underestimate him yet again and take away the equipment he gathered in Chains of Olympus, saying that he's still not worthy of it. Chains of Olympus is definitely what you'd get if God of War 1 was written by the guys at Rebellion, since it is the 2-bit Call of Duty of its series. While it is nice to see that Sony put the effort in to remaster this to the PS3, and it does look like a really solid PSP title, the graphics still look rather strange with the clay-like 3D models, and it gets really frickin' obvious when Kratos finds the optional sex minigame and those female frickin' models. What the shit is with that character design? Lackluster story and visuals aside, and even though the climbing walls needed much more work put in to make them highlighted, it ends up being a weaker, shorter add-on to the original trilogy. This game barely cracks 5 hours, and that's not a good sign of a game's quality, and overall, it's not going to age well. I'd suggest the game if you could find it on the cheap, because for a small experience, it's still a good quality title, and gives you the great God of War combat expected of a hack-and-slash masterpiece. What it can offer is just another 5 hours of God of War 1, so if that's all you want, have a bloody blast. Next week we'll be getting into the original trilogy with the very first God of War game, finally. Hopefully it will have aged well, but until we find out, here's your victory for gamers.